Dorit is like, somebody help, and holding on. Kyle is like, nobody touch me.
So obviously, first of all, there is a huge group of fans at our studio who were like, oh my God, you're going to talk to who today? Can you get this tea? Can you get this tea?
They want the tea.
They want the tea.
Girl, let me spill it then.
Oh my God, so let's talk some tea. Your first time sharing your life. What's that been like? Like, especially looking back, there were people who weren't saying such nice things.
You know what's funny is that I keep telling people that this is not really new.
Yeah.
It's just a new environment. It's like the boardroom was full of politics, was full of bickering and fighting and people choosing sides and alliances and, sometimes being on the outs and sometimes being on the in, depending on what was happening.
Yeah.
It's also not new to know that somebody says something looks not so nice about you, except this time I get to actually see it come out their mouth.
You get to see it.
Yeah.
And there's no
and then
going back.
I can tell them, I can ask them about it directly. The corporate space, oftentimes, you're not sure, you can feel it. You get some sort of feelings that you're like, I don't think that person likes me very much.
Yes.
Or they're having conversations or meetings that I'm not involved in, but you're not exactly sure. So at least this time, I'm sure.
It's interesting you say in the boardroom you get the feeling, because I feel like you've had some interesting spidey senses of really seeing people on the show for who they are, like right off the bat.
Yes.
Do you think it's because of your boardroom experience where you kind of have to be able to tell?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because the thing is that in the boardroom, that's just survival.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's not even like a skill that you're like, oh, this is a nice to have. No, that's survival. It's like if you want to ascend, and I'm not just talking about like, oh, I want to do well and get promoted. I'm talking about ascension to that corner office. And I've not just done it one time, I've done it 4 times.
Yes, she
has. At different companies.
You heard her.
And so in order to do that, you have to be quick. Understand who's on your side, who's not on your side, what somebody's motivations are, what else is going on with them that makes them act the way that they do. Not take it too personally, because usually it's not about you, it's about something else that's going on. And then try to solve it as quickly as possible so your life doesn't get ruined.
I just got goosebumps. So I feel like I'm getting my own little workshop right now. This is fantastic. Now, when you look back as well, is there a moment that you look at and you reflect and you're like, because it's a learning experience to go back and watch yourself as well. And is there a moment where you went, you know what, I think I could have handled that differently?
I don't know that there is, because like actually when we were filming, I got a really great piece of advice, which was just like, you don't want to do anything or say anything that you're going to regret later.
Yes.
Like whatever you do and say, stand on business and say that, right? Because regardless of how the edit is, or if somebody doesn't like your position, you're confident in your position. And so who cares? If somebody doesn't agree with you. And that has happened more times now than I can count. Where people have an opinion about a personal choice that I've made or a friendship I've developed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm standing on business. I believe the thing that I said. I believe the way that I am. And so there's nothing to argue with, because I know I'm right.
Speaking of your friendships that you've developed, Dorit, a lot of people feel like that there is this underlying motive, which is something that you should be able to point out for sure.
Right.
Because especially she's got, she's not on the best terms with Kyle.
Yeah.
Garcelle does not feel that great about her as well.
I don't think anybody does, actually.
I know.
You're like counting them one by one, and I'm like, I think there's a consensus.
So are you friends with her because you feel bad?
Oh, God. No. You know what? I was saying this to her shortly after we met, which is that, like, I do believe in divine timing. I don't believe in coincidences and things like that, but I do believe in divine timing. And timing is so important, because I don't know if we would have been friends if I met her 6 years ago.
Interesting. And why is that?
Well, because she would have been in a different place in her life.
Right.
Maybe less evolved about her thoughts about people, about situations.
Fair.
I think at this very moment in time, she's extraordinarily vulnerable. Right? It's like she's like looking and reaching for anyone that she can hold on to add stability. I happen to be that person. Right. And the thing is that in this particular scenario, I also happen to be a very level-headed person. Right. And so therefore, it's like I can give her sound advice. Like we had so many conversations.
You're like a pillar in her life.
Yeah.
So you do
that is
feel
okay.
a little bit bad for her.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, I do.
Yes.
Because if you really consider it, and the thing I think that, and I will use the word hurt, right? Because I think it's also a misunderstanding in the general public that like, you don't know these women, or like, you don't, it's like, these are frivolous relationships. But if you consider how much time we actually spend together,
you really do,
and how deeply you talk about issues, like it's not just like, oh, here, let's talk about this flower arrangement. It's like, sit down and tell me about the disaster of your marriage. Like, holy crap, And the thing is that she's hurt, and I feel badly for her because she doesn't feel empowered. And I hate that.
And I love that you're showing up for her.
Especially as an empowered woman.
Yes.
Especially coming from my seat, coming from my perspective, where I own my life. I own my homes, I own my cars, I own my schedule, I own like where I come and go, I own my heart, I own everything.
Yes.
And so to not be in that position, I think would be very, very difficult. And so I feel for her. I feel empathetic.
That's actually really wonderful to see, because a lot of people, when they get to that place, it's almost like they want to be gatekeepers, right? And they want to protect that. But instead, you're turning it around saying, hey, I'm actually, my cup is full. So come drink from it.
Girl, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I wish that more women would behave in the way that we're discussing, you know what I mean? And even the funny thing is, even with my conflict with Kyle, which I don't really see as a conflict, but I said that she was cold.
Cold, yes.
Because I see it as just the truth. It's not a diss, it's not a, criticism of her character, but I think she is cold right now. She has to be. Because there's so many things going on around her, and she's also caught up in a tornado. Where she and Dorit behave differently in their outreach, right? So whereas like Dorit is like, somebody help, and holding on, Kyle is like, nobody touch me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Because that's her defense mechanism.
That's her defense mechanism. And so for me, it's like, look, I feel the same kind of empathy, but if you're not open, then I can't help.
But let's be real. If women were having conversations like we are, we wouldn't have the Housewives.
Well, that is a good point, okay? Because the people love the drama.
People love
the drama. They love the bickering and the fighting, even though they complain about it. Because I'm just like, now see, don't go online and talk about how you hate seeing these women fight all the time. But if we were actually having these very calm, empathetic conversations, you probably wouldn't tune in.
Nobody would tune in for that,
This is a discourse on humanity and society.
I'm so sorry to break it to you. But listen, you talk about that you do have real conversations. And even though, yes, you have said Kyle is cold, which you're not the only one. Garcelle has also expressed that she wasn't the most friendliest. Her fans want to know why her separation was a disaster.
Right.
And they've spotted her out with Morgan. We've seen them hand in hand. So, like, what is happening there?
Well, okay, so here's the real truth of it is that I don't know.
Well, we hear that at the reunion that she was in tears.
Well, look, people report things. I don't know where they got that from.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
So we won't see her in tears?
No, I mean, there are some tears, but I think that's just emotion of the moment. But it's not like a raging, crazy, thing.
Maybe it's a reunion because she's so happy to see everyone?
No. Definitely not. Definitely not that. But you know what, though? Here's the thing is that, again, I think that, Kyle's in a place where she just wants to protect.
Yes.
Perhaps even to her own detriment, that she wants to protect those in her life. And towards the end of filming, we were able to sort of like bridge the gap. I went over to her house. We had really, I thought, deep and meaningful conversation about what's happening in her life. And that's essentially what I walked away with, was that like she is a protector, and she doesn't want anything going badly for anyone in her life, even if it is to her own detriment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that to me is...
Which every human has a right to that.
Yes, and there's something noble about it. And at the same time, to your point already, we are on a show which demands that we are open about the things that are going on in our life. So I think that's where she has to consider what she wants to do in her life now.
This is what the show
is where we are.
But you're keeping one of the biggest informations to herself. You're a good friend still, regardless. Because I would have been like, well, this is what's happening. I'm kidding. Lastly, before we get into why you're actually here, Garcelle also put something interesting in her stories, and I'll quote this: "Not all skinfolk are kinfolk," which had a lot of people going, wait, what? Did you feel like it was targeted at you?
You know what? I really didn't. The funny thing is, I didn't think it was about me until people started saying it was about me.
Interesting.
And then I was like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Because then I was trying to do the math and be like, now carry the 5 minus the 7. Where did I do that? You know? Because the thing
is that, girl mathing.
Right? For sure. Because I'm like, hey, look, one thing that I have been very careful about, especially as a storyteller, is not to pit the 2 black girls against each other. Yes. I think that's a very dangerous narrative.
100%.
You know, it's like, why? Why do we have to do that? Like, because she's on the show, people were like, oh, now we have a new black girl, so she can go. And they started saying that almost immediately. And I was like, but why is that? Like, why can't we have 2 of us? And by the way, we're not the same. So we're talking about storylines, we're talking about history, we're talking about experiences that do not mirror each other.
No.
So if there's an allowance for 4 white women to be on the show, why can't there be 2 black women? Like, why is it just got to be 1? And this is what happens to us all the time. Like in corporate spaces, on TV, and everywhere. And sometimes it's like, you know, just take away the race of it all. When you're in the corporate space, this has happened to me more times than I can count. Where it's like, if you're the only woman in the space and there happens to be another talented woman that shows up, people expect that there's war.
One's got to go.
Yeah, one's got to go. So for me, I'm like, look, unless Garcelle says to me, girl, this is about you, I'm gonna leave it where it is.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. And this is what makes you such a badass, which brings us to the badass workshop.
Yes.
Let's talk about, like, people are excited about this.
Let me tell you.
And like, people don't realize how much corporate experience you bring. Like, you have been in some of the biggest, most men-driven corporate rooms.
Ooh.
And here you are sharing that story and empowering women. So tell me about this workshop and what inspired this.
Oh gosh, okay, so over the course of my career, right, I would say probably, let's see, I've been in the corporate space for about 25 years.
Wow.
In the last decade, when my star really started to shine and that rocket was going, I can't tell you how many times people in airports and an elevator or whatever would stop and be like, tell me how to do it. How do I get more money? How do I get to a corner office? How do I get promoted? How do I show up in a room? And I'm rushing to give an answer in 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And I always felt like I was cheating people because they just wanted to know the information. And so then it was 2020 and we're at home in the pandemic, okay? I had just taken my really big job as the global chief marketing officer at Netflix. It wasn't like I didn't have anything to do, okay?
Wow.
I was busy and I was under pressure. And still, I was getting these messages, you know, through DMs and other places where people are just like, I'm struggling in my job. Now that we're in the pandemic, like I can't get to my boss. I don't know how to ask for more money. What do I do? And I was like, you know what? Like, I never had those answers. Like, nobody ever provided that. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna do it. Wow. And so I simply turned on the camera. And I was like, all right, if you wanna join, here's the link. Come in for an hour. I'm just gonna talk straight to the camera. Like, there was no editing, no cuts, nothing fancy produced. I'm just talking to the camera and I'm gonna tell you. So then I did classes on how to get more money, how to ask for a raise, you know, how to get promoted, what to do when you're presenting, how to win people over in a room. What is your body, mind, and spirit all doing at the same time to make you the most powerful? Something no one
teaches you in school.
No one teaches you.
No one teaches you
and
that.
Also, to your point earlier, like, it's almost like you're being, like, there's gatekeeping happening. Yes. And what really happens, and what happened to me, is that you start to rise in the ranks, and people are like, oh, she needs to earn her stripes. Right. I'm like, why? Like, if you have the answer, why not just tell me? Yeah. So I don't have to go through the pain. And so I created the Badass Workshop as a way to actually workshop some of these ideas, some of these theories, and I'm just gonna tell you.
That's
like, if you need to know how to get more money, I'm gonna tell you how to do it, because I've made a lot of money.
Well, knowledge is power.
Yes.
And I want to know how to make a lot of money.
Yes.
So I'm going to do your workshop.
Yes, exactly.
And I feel like you need to start a podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
and you need to bring all these executives from all these platforms in these boardrooms.
Girl, that's a good idea.
Listen,
that's actually a really
I would
good
tune
idea.
in. I would tune in
Girl,
for that.
because that's the thing is that we don't know the information.
Yeah.
You know, I think it has really felt, especially in the corporate spaces, like you need to climb that ladder, you know, rung by rung, and somehow by the time you get to the top, you would have like made all of the all this hard shell because you like worked hard for it. And I'm like, girl, please, like. Why can't I just tell you so you could get a shortcut?
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty amazing gift that you're actually giving everybody.
Oh, well, thanks.
Because it is, like you said, we need more women like you.
Yes.
We need more women like you in these corporate rooms
Yeah.
and then on these shows
Yes.
representing a whole nother sort of viewership, a
Yeah.
whole nother demographic. Lastly,
Yes.
the Traitors.
Oh.
Dorit actually said that you should go on the show.
Oh my God. I
feel like you would come out of there winning the whole thing.
Well, here's what's so funny. On this last one, right, they like went after all the housewives. And I was literally like, oh my God, is that the strategy? Like they just went for all of them, you know, to get them.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is actually one of my favorite housewives is Chanel Ayan, you know, from Dubai.
Yes.
Who is
Habibi.
outrageous. Oh,
Yes.
love her, okay? And you know, she's a little bit off her rocker, which I love, okay? Yeah. And so she went on, and actually, funny enough, she ended up wearing some of my hair that like I created as part of my business, like on the show. Yeah, I literally posted about it today. And she is so fabulous and so amazing. And she was like kicked off almost immediately. Because I was like, damn. Like, you know, if she can't make it, exactly. It's like, how am I going to make it? So I don't know. I'm going to have to consider
make it. Whatever you touch, I think turns to gold. And we will end on that note.
Oh,
thank you so much for your time. And thank you for
it.
doing what you're doing because I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it.
I appreciate it.
Like the video? Then hit the button, or better yet, drop us a comment. Then check out our latest videos here. And don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button here for more celebrity interviews and entertainment news.